Thank you all for coming out today to this workshop. This was, we did a workshop, two workshops back in April, I think, called Rethinking Exams, as we were all kind of scrambling to kind of translate those in-person classes to remote, kind of, in the short term, or what we thought might be the short term. But we thought it would be really worthwhile to come back and reconsider some of those things as we're continuing to work through yet another reality of this kind of mixed mode, possibly remote kind of teaching. I've just kind of full disclosure, I've had to go fully remote this week because we've got some COVID in my family now, the positive test. So I had to make the full switch, and so I'm going to be working from home totally for at least the next 2 weeks, right? And I'm sure we're all going to be kind of dealing with different aspects of that for the rest of the semester at the very least. So we thought it was worthwhile to kind of come back to this, but also, kind of offer some different things to think about as well. We didn't want to just redo that workshop. What we want to do today is talk a little bit about this idea of authenticity with assessments, just to kind of give you a foregrounding of kind of how we're kind of presenting you to think about testing and exams and assessments in a broader sense. And then we're going to kind of work through kind of a flow chart about trying to figure out, what, if anything, you might be able to be comfortable with or be able to consider changing in terms of your typical, assessment model for your classes, either for this semester or even for the spring semester, right? Because obviously now that we're in a regular, I was going to say a regular semester, but now that we're in the middle of the semester, right? And we've all done our syllabi, we've all kind of established that. If we're going to make changes to the syllabus, we'll want to obviously really think about talking to the students about that ahead of time. I'm going to be doing this in my class this afternoon because I'm making some changes to how I do tests, or thinking about making some changes. And so I'm actually I'm going to poll them and kind of get them to make the final decision for me. Should we do our tests during class time online, or should we do the review during class on time and do the tests in their own time outside of class? So I'm going to see what they say, and then we'll make some changes if we need to. So that's where we're going with this. I'm going to go real quickly through these first couple of slides here just to talk about, just to get this idea of authentic assessment kind of spelled out if you're not too familiar with it, right? But there's increasing research these days that really suggests to us that the traditional model of academic testing needs to be considered a little bit more, right? One of the big problems, obviously, is this idea that a traditional test is really what these researchers call a neutral event. So I've got the Zoom menu blocking my screen there. In that students aren't actually learning anything through the process. It's a purely assessment. It's a purely kind of separated assessment, right? There's no learning going on through it. They might be learning while they're studying, but that's a little bit different, right? So the idea really of authentic assessments is that it not only tests what they know, right, but it helps them learn that material even better through the process of demonstrating what they know, right? So there's a constant cycle of learning going on, even at that assessment point, which has traditionally been that neutral event. And as always, feel free to ask any questions or drop them in the chat, and we'll respond to those, right? And this is an overly busy kind of slide, I realize, with way too much text on it, violating all sorts of design principles. But it just kind of runs through real quickly, and we'll make this available later on if you want to take a look at it too. This idea of here's what typical tests usually do, and here's how it could be tweaked or adapted to become more truly authentic, right? And so you can see in terms of correct answers, here's the question, here's the correct answer, and everything else is the incorrect answer. Whereas an authentic assessment is not only going to ask students to kind of find the right answer, but to demonstrate how they got that solution in the first place, right? So correction correctness is not the only criterion, right? The ability to justify. And again, we see that, we do that a lot with various kind of models as well, right? Where, you know, my son was doing his math homework and he's always got to show his work, right? It's not good enough just to get the right answer. He's got to demonstrate how he got to that answer. And that in and of itself is a form of authenticity, right? So some of this is stuff that's become pretty standard for us, right? But you can see here this idea that pushing it into the realm of authenticity makes things in some ways a little more complex, right? It's more challenging, right? And it does take the guesswork out of it. It takes the guessing factor out of things as well, right? Which is you know, concern I've always had, which is if I give students multiple choice options, well, are they demonstrating to me that they really know that answer, or are they just good at guessing? Did they just get lucky? Or are they good at figuring out my patterns of kind of fake answers, right? So that's what we're really talking about with authenticity with assessment, right? Is pushing it beyond just right or wrong. You know, demonstrate what you've memorized, but really kind of demonstrate to us what you've absorbed over the course of the semester. So this is a cartoon that I came across from somebody I follow on Twitter last spring that really kind of spurred a lot of this on. And it's, as you can see here, it's a bit of a flow chart. And I kind of made the passing comment last spring when we did this workshop, when I presented this, and I said, well, I should have just used this to design the workshop. And so that's ultimately what we did for today, is we used this flow chart to design the rest of this workshop, really. So we're going to kind of step you through this process to kind of think about the kinds of assessments you use in your classes, and to kind of pose some questions to you to kind of ask, well, are there alternatives that you can think about? If yes, here's what you might do. If not, here's another question you might want to think about as well, right? Ultimately, to get to the point, to try to figure out, are there some changes that could be made either this semester with, you know, obviously, like we said, kind of talking your students through those changes, and then also, obviously, going forward in the long run as well. So with that, I'm going to jump right in, and I think hand things off to Elizabeth for our first thing. And I'll show you kind of what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of present this, right? Kind of ask the question, right? Present you with a couple things to think about, and then we're going to put you into breakout rooms to talk to each other about the possibilities for your unique situations.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay, for that, the context and the framework for us thinking about that. I think it's really important to think about authentic assessment. We're going to end up talking about compassion as well, and thinking about really, to be as compassionate as we can be right now, really thinking about what are our learning objectives, and then how can we use these assessments to help us meet these learning objectives, and really just kind of focusing on that. So we have a series of questions. This is just the first one, just like Jay showed you the cartoon with the flow chart. We're going to go through each of those questions, and what I want you to think about is because you're here because you're willing to or you're curious about, what am I going to do with these kind of high stakes exams that I have, or what are alternative assessments I can use as opposed to high stakes exams. So I want you to think about a specific course, either your remote course that you're teaching, or a course that you're doing mixed mode, which is a different kind of challenge, or one that you feel like, okay, it might have to shift. But we're going to go through the series of questions. You all are going to talk about them in the smaller groups, so that then we can come back and just hear a couple points and make it through each one of these, because each question kind of funnels down to so some of your responses might be no, okay, and then you'll funnel you down to the next question and the next question. So that's how we set this up. So this is it. I want you to think, for the first one, think about your learning outcome. Okay, your learning outcomes for your course. And is there a way to achieve those learning outcomes without an exam? Right, so I put the exam in quotes here, the big high stakes exam, and this big high stakes exam that then you have to worry about cheating with, or the big high stakes exam that you have to worry about locking students down. And is there a way to meet the objectives without that big exam? And is there a way that you could then maybe have lower stake assessments that could meet that same objective? So that's what I want you to think about first of all. Is there, and then we're going to, again, like I said, get more sophisticated in our questions and kind of funnel down, but is there a way you can meet your learning objectives without a big exam. And some of you might already be doing that, and then you'll share that with each other too. So Jay's going to put us in breakout rooms.
Yes, I am. Sorry to stop sharing the screen there to actually get access to this. So, hey, y'all, welcome back. We would like to hear from each of the two groups pretty quickly, just kind of maybe one thing that you all, one significant thought your group had, or what you all chose to focus on. And I did not assign any speakers, but maybe we could get somebody from Harish Harris and Stephanie's group to tell us something they discussed.
Yeah, one of you all unmute yourself and then just tell us
remember to unmute yourself.
Yeah, one thing that you discussed.
I can talk. So we basically have all done some work trying to de-emphasize the exams. So we're talking about biodiversity, botany, biology 1240, senior capstone, and advanced research, I believe, in psychology. And so we've increased writing assignments and other activities. Interestingly, Stephanie said that she is using student feedback to give a more authentic research type experience where students comment on each other's works, which I think is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Excellent. All right, sounds like you all are already doing a lot of this stuff. That's great though. It's kind of early to tell, but I mean, do you get a sense from the students that they recognize that shift in, or that kind of de-emphasis of testing, or is that kind of just...
and Harish may be able to comment more. I think, you know, capstone is pretty new, and the students in 1240 would not have probably noticed because, you know, unless they're retaking it.
Yeah,
we still have the same number of tests, they just count less.
Gotcha. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, I think the juniors and seniors probably are, at least in my view, better suited for discussion-based, assessments to be done without exams.
Mm-hmm.
I may be wrong, but, particularly in biology, I'm very not worried. What is the word I'm looking for? very much interested in making sure that the early biologists understand the true meanings of the words, able to apply those.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even in biodiversity, which is a sophomore level course, very simple words like homology or simple words like chromosome. They haven't quite understood what practically it means. That is the case. How do I get any assessment feedback about something that somebody else says? So that worries me. That is concerning. So I did a capstone course last semester. One of the most enjoyable courses that I taught at Xavier. Because we were discussing a lot, at least with the ones that participated. There was some who were kind of cut off. They didn't participate much at all. But I think that kind of discussion-based, alternative assessment-based teaching is more possible, at least in biology, I think, at the upper levels, rather than first and the second years.
I agree with you. The way I approached it in Intro to Psych, which is literally some students that were in high school 3 months ago, right? Is I have set up my class where they do an assignment, a discussion board, and a quiz every single week. So effectively the exams are worth less because so many of the points are worth, and like some of the activities are, go find a TED Talk about psychology and summarize it on this worksheet I'm giving you, which seems really easy, right? But it's keeping them connected to the work. So like, I think that the way that we approach those discussion things have to be so different from I call my baby freshman. I say that with love though. My baby freshman, I am teaching you how to do college, right? Which is a completely different thing than the conversations I had with my senior research students, right? Like where I'm like prepping you for grad school. Like there's a different, and you're so right. The way that we have to do it, I had to kind of let go of the precision on discussion board for intro. It was like, if you tried, it's only 5 points. You're going to get it if you try.
Effort's good.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to see if the other group, Janice, Jonathan, and Morwell had something they wanted to share.
And we'll let the second group go first next time, because we're going to say you have 1 minute to share whatever you want to share to move to the next question. Jonathan, Morwell, or Janice, do y'all want to share anything?
Oh, no.
Janice, I always feel like I talk too much. How about Janice?
I can.
Well, okay. Morwell, do you want to take it? Okay.
Oh, okay. So like I teach physics. Most of the exams in physics, they are problem solving, and these are very susceptible to cheating, because we've had the cases where students can go to some websites online where they can get help, where they can get a full solution to a problem during an exam. So one of the things that we have done is to lower the contribution of the final exam, right, to reduce the stakes of the final exam. But I believe we should do more. We should not only the final exam, even the semester, the mid-semester exams, we should also lower them again, so that we put more emphasis on the homework. These are long problems, and they've got a whole week to submit a homework. So if you put more emphasis, and I think in homework, they are more likely to work by themselves rather than to seek help. And I still think we have to do more on exams to move away from just having to solve problems. We need to find some other way. That's what we are currently discussing it with some other colleagues, but we haven't come up with anything that is satisfactory as far as I am concerned. So
well,
that's what
well, that actually leads to our next question really nicely, which is how can you redesign your exam? Jay, I think this is.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the question. If you can't just do if you feel like you still need that kind of big final assessment that kind of has a pretty big weight, or even if you're still not happy with the weight distributions, but you still need to kind of have still a fairly significant final assessment, is there a way then to redesign that assessment into some other format other than the traditional exam? So I'm going to go ahead again and put you all in the groups. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Again, talk about it. What would work, or what could work, or what are some possibilities for working in your unique situations? And then when we come back, we will hear first from breakout room 3. Okay, see y'all in 5 minutes. You're going to need to join Manuel. There you go. You're muted again. It's the breakout rooms. It does me. Yeah, I do it all the time.
Every time. Timer. I'm looking for the timer.
Oh, I got one going. Okay.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm gonna go back.
That's good to hear. That I mean, they're talking about this stuff. It's interesting to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually gonna go peek. I'm actually gonna go stick in right now. Okay. I'm actually gonna go to my breakout room.
Okay.
See ya.
All right.
You've got the timer, so I'll see ya.
I'm good.
We were
Welcome
just
back, everyone.
we were
Yes,
just talking
Stephanie.
about students who walk and drive on their phones during class. I haven't seen the driving yet. I've had students call in while they're driving. Janice and Morwell and I were just, but I've this walking, you know, across campus, which again, I mean, it's good to be outside, but it's I don't know, hard to participate. But anyway.
I had one who was having a conversation with like 4 other people on campus while he was in class, and he kept accidentally unmuting himself. And he kept his camera on the whole time too, on his phone. So.
Yeah, again, I am teaching health psych. I was telling my group, and so we, I had a student taking it from her, driving from her car, and I just said, no, you have to pull over or listen to the recording. This is health psych. You can't have a car accident during the class. Right. But Stephanie, yes, it would. It was. I think as long as you, I think it would really cut down on the time, the grading time, as long as you had a really kind of strict, can't go over this amount of time. And that's something I'm thinking about playing with. Okay.
All right, so let's hear again from it was actually group 3, breakout room 3, which is Janice, Jonathan, and Morwell. Did you all come up with some possible alternative formats for final assessments?
Not really. we got sidetracked.
Okay. No problem. I did. I'll just. Oh, go ahead.
I had some ideas about. Oh, I said, like what Jonathan said. For a small class in physics, I can do a take-home exam. It's a different exam than a normal exam, but it works for a small class. But for a large class, I don't think I can do that.
Yeah.
So I'm actually thinking about that. For a small class, I would redesign my exam to be take home so that I don't have to worry about what they do. They can have 3 days to do the exam and then bring it. It's something that can work.
Yeah, that is obviously something you need to consider, right? Those larger classes, you know, sometimes these authentic assessments do often kind of bring with them heavier grading needs, right? Obviously, a multiple choice test is pretty manageable kind of thing, whereas a big paper or even a video presentation or something, you know, requires a different level of effort. I'll just kind of say I did a X-Core 3000 level class last spring, and really their final project, I didn't really couch it as their final project, but it was just kind of their semester project. They did in small groups. They did podcast episodes, and I thought it went really well, even despite the fact that with the disruption and everything, they were still able to pull it off. They all use Zoom to record their sessions, and there's some great stuff going on. And then we just did for the final exam, we just ended up, I had to do a short timed essay. So how about the other group then? Did you all come up with some specific possibilities that you might consider or are considering?
Jay, there was one comment in the chat. Would you be willing to share your rubrics for that assignment? Stephanie asked.
Yeah, I'll just couch it by saying I lifted it heavily from somebody else's rubric, but I'll be glad to share with you as well. So Harish, Harris, Stephanie, do you have any possibilities?
Yeah, I think in the final exam, rather than redesigning it to include engagement or writing type of things, I think what we could do is to, what you said earlier, meaning reduce the weight of the final exam, doing those activities earlier, and making sure that we assess the achievement of the course objective or the unit objectives when and as and when necessary throughout the course. So the final exam itself will be low risk or low stake anyway, because exam giving these writings, with 45 students, it's going to be very difficult to grade.
Yes, and that's, I mean, that's a good point, right? As well, but yeah, I mean, I think in terms of reducing the weight, that's obviously that's kind of the first step of this process, to consider that if that's possible. You know, I think that's a great approach. And again, there are downsides to doing these more kind of non-traditional assessments, which in particular is the amount of grading that they often kind of bring with them, or the difficulty of grading. So for larger classes, that's a real consideration you'd want to think about as well.
Yeah.
And oh, go ahead, Jonathan. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth. Yeah, I mean, it's a familiar refrain, but that's the other thing beside the little arrows that keep me up at night, because I'm 100% online actually. And I have a total of 80 plus students, and already just even little short reflections and discussion posts, that it's kicking my butt. It's really, but you know, that it is what it is. So.
Well, that's exactly what I was gonna say, is that I'm gonna bring a bit of compassion in here for a minute too, and say this is important stuff for students, right? It's important that we think about this for students and work on this for students, but we also have to have some self-compassion too, and not do more than we can do. We just we can't. We've got to take care of ourselves too. So I think so, Jonathan. So for those of you who are grading 18 zillion things. Like there's just a bunch of different models about that. It can be just like what Stephanie was saying, so low stakes that it's just kind of you check it off and you just kind of like scan it. You're not giving that kind of feedback. You can go through, like I'm doing reading guides this semester, this every single day. So I try to make a video note feedback on the first 10 on Tuesdays, the second 10 on Thursdays. So I'm not making video notes every single time. Try to read then more carefully for this group on one day, and then skim the group the next day, because by the end, because it's low stakes, so it's not really going to make that big a difference, and by the end it all level out. I've also heard people who will even put in their syllabus when they have a ton of grading to do of this low stakes, not the high stakes, but the low stakes kind of daily grind of, I will grade every, I pick a random one. So the students never, I'm going to mess up the details, but pick a random one every day, and once your name's out, you never know what's going to get graded. So their students are always having to do their good work because it will get graded, but you're not grading 70 every time. So there are some models out there for that. So I just also want you to think about compassion to yourself as well.
Yeah, and even with rubrics, although rubrics are taking a long time to put together and reuse, but the rubrics do help. I'm sorry to always be jumping in here, but I was looking at, because that Harris's chat made me, I had thought of that earlier. And frankly, especially with this Thanksgiving thing, I'll do it. It'll be a take home, but it's not going to be the day of the exam. They can get it done a whole lot earlier. I think we have to have some latitude, and even if we ignore or modify the final exam requirement. Right.
That is it's a great question. I don't know if we can get any clarification on it this semester. But like I said, like for my ex-core class last semester, I had a final exam. It was a timed essay that was worth maybe 10% of their grade, right? And so it technically called it the final exam just because I thought I had to have something called the final exam.
Pedagogically, the whole idea of a final exam kind of flies in the face of what we're trying to do with this discussion. So,
unless it is something that can be synthesizing, right? I think thinking of it in terms of, I'm thinking of mine more in terms of a formative versus summative assessment. Thank you, Stephanie. But I'm thinking about mine in terms of a kind of a final project where I'm giving them a lot of flexibility about how they do it and what they choose, and the grade is going to be based on the synthesizing information. And then exactly what you were just saying, Jonathan, I'm going to just say that the deadline for it is my final exam time and encourage them to do it earlier. But I'm going to say, here it is, and the deadline's there.
Yep.
Okay, so this last question, we didn't let the first group go, but it's unless somebody's dying to say something.
No, they had a chance.
Oh, good. Okay, good. So here, we're not going to get breakout groups for this, but we just want you to think about if you can't get rid of your exam, right? And I'm looking at my STEM colleagues here, where there's some that I know you've got these coordinated courses, and there's things where you just can't get rid of your exams, even the high stakes exams. Is there a way to design it using an alternative format, like making it more project-based, something like that? And online, like in CAT, the number one thing we are getting asked for, and we're pursuing some outside speakers right now, is about academic integrity online and online cheating, especially like from our math colleagues. It is difficult to ensure academic integrity in online high stakes, because as soon as you make it high stakes, then it's high pressure, and then it's going to be more likely. And Jay's got a link here from the AP Psychology, because I'm involved in AP Psych, but AP testing in general had to deal with this year. And there's just been all kinds of drama, lawsuits over locking down, uploading, all these kind of things. Last semester, we had faculty members who made students sign honors codes that you will not share this test, and within 5 minutes of giving this test out, it showed up on Chegg or these other, and the faculty members knew it was their test because it had Xavier specific, it was it's an essay kind of test. It's extremely hard. So, so we would challenge you to kind of think about designing it in a way that really demonstrates unique application or synthesizing in a way that, that minimizes the opportunity to cheat as opposed to locking students down. Jay, you're trying to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say the other thing we found, especially last semester, but it's already continuing this semester, which is that, those techniques, the options for trying to make the testing more secure online, like Respondus and stuff like that. Yes, sometimes they work, but sometimes they don't work. And when they don't work, they really don't work, right? So there's, we've had this kind of ongoing issue with that technology that we do have, but at the same time, it's definitely not perfect.
And something to think about. I mean, I can't ever not be a psychologist, right? Something to think about is I had a student email me yesterday because my very first exam using Respondus, because last semester I mildly gave up. Like I didn't know if they had webcams. This semester I told them before the semester that they had to have a webcam, so I didn't feel bad about doing Respondus. But she had a full panic attack during my exam and emailed me about it and was like, I just put A's all the way down. I know I failed. Every time I moved, the computer froze me out in it, because it's Respondus. And I was just like, oh, so any student with an anxiety disorder, this is just going to just flip them out because it makes them hyper aware of their testing. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there as like a concern I had, because I was like, well, that's awful and not at all what I intended. I let her retake it because I was just like, I don't know what else I can do for you.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because that's the kind of compassionate point, right? It's people with anxiety disorders. If you've got the where you're being videotaped, and then I had a student, who had her little brother coming through the room. So, let's say that the little brother comes through, and she has to, get out of here. No, well, now that's going to flag it, right? She looked down, and I think really think about, and again, I'm really talking to my STEM people here, really think about, if you are going to do this level of locking down and for students, what are you going to do with that data? Let's say you look and they do look down. What are you going to do with that? Because if you are not going to do anything with that, why put them through this? Is there another option? Is there another alternative? And I know that you all are making coordinated group decisions, and some of it's out of your individual control, but it's a good conversation to have. What would we really do with this? What if then the student says, no, it wasn't that, it was my dog threw up, or, and then what? It's a good question to ask when you're making decisions about putting students through things that cause such anxiety, like Stephanie just importantly pointed out.
So the last thing I put up here is just some ideas, and Janice has talked a lot about these in the workshop she's done that focused more specifically on creating and designing quizzes in Brightspace in terms of the ability to set certain restrictions, to use question pools, to randomize questions, to shuffle the questions. One thing I did want to add is that in terms of, I think it's a good suggestion. Is if you've got portions of your exam that are written or even short answer. Again, Brightspace quizzes can handle those, but those don't get passed through Turnitin, right? And so again, if one consideration you could do is have the essay portion or the written portion submitted as an assignment in Brightspace separately from like the multiple choice or whatever section, and then those written portions at least will get passed through Turnitin. So if there's if there's concern about cheating there, Turnitin would pick that up. Jonathan, you got a question?
Yeah, I've had, and this is mainly with freshmen, but because I didn't think about the quizzes, and after my first quiz, I realized, oh, Turnitin's not working, but for that. But I've used Turnitin for a long time, like for the X-Score 1000. Mm-hmm. But I'm having a hard time getting students to even look at the similarity reports, and I make it visible. They have a resubmit chance. I've explained it in class, and I'm still getting students who are sending, things they got from Encyclopedia Britannica. And so especially maybe in your classes, Jay, with that, with English, do you have some tips about how to motivate them aside from the fact that they're going to get a 0, which...
No, I mean, it sounds like you're doing, I mean, I do spend, even in like my X-Score class, at the beginning of the semester, we go over the academic integrity policy and like the forms, and I explain to them how that all works. And then, we talk about the Turnitin rubric, what that looks like and what that means, and don't freak out just because you got a high percentage or anything like that, but actually go in and look. And I always, like you said, I always have a resubmit policy. And so I always kind of say, it's another good reason to turn your stuff in early, just in case this comes up. But then I had, a student who turned in something that was very clearly not her work for the first learning reflection we did in X-Score, which was, describe your first week of college. And it, wow, and it's 300 words.
Students sort of like to do that on their own words, but anyway.
One thing, Jonathan, I have not done this in a while, but I did this a couple of years ago in advanced research, and so it's making me hearing you ask that question, and I need to do it again because it was, and the very first thing they had to turn in, they had to, I forget exactly. But they had to, they got some points. They got a couple points for looking at their similarity report and then showing me that they had looked at it. And I can't remember if it was a screenshot or if it was at that point in time, they just showed me in class. I'm sure at that point in time, they probably just showed me in class. But I had them, and I just gave a couple points. And then the next time I gave them a couple points, and then I kind of dropped it off, because then once they saw that it was useful, they saw the change. But I've kind of over my time in CAT, which has been a shift for me, kind of gotten away from feeling icky about giving students points for things, because how many people would have finished Silaflex if they didn't get the $2,000? Not as many. So I think
I thought it was going to be like 300 or 400. So thank you. Thanks, by the way. I didn't know.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. McCall. So I think that I think that just sometimes putting, I use the analogy of committee work. We know the committees that we're on where we don't have to do anything, and we don't. And then the ones where it matters, and we do. So for them, that points are what the grades are important to them. And so I think, give them a few points, because then you're going to at least get enough people that see it's useful. You're never going to catch some.
I'm still trying to find those committees that don't require any work.
They never put you on those, Jay. All the rest of us are on those committees except for you.
I just don't get to a point where you don't do committees either. That's terrible to say, but I can't.
Don't listen to that, Stephanie.
That's one of the few advantages of tenure. You can say no, but even then it takes like 30 years to learn that at Xavier. So. Oh my gosh.
So true.
Jay, can I ask you a question, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Hirsch.
See this avoid simple computations part on the slide. So, you know, particularly in natural sciences, I think quantification capacity in the mind is very, very important, particularly when they get into scientific method. And also now, for example, in biodiversity that I teach, there is a very significant area called Hardy-Weinberg principle, which is all about how to track whether a gene has evolved or not by tracking the frequency of a particular form of the gene in the population before environmental event or some migration event or something like that, right? So, doing some simple computation is the science there. It's important for them to understand even the concepts. And that sort of cuts through many other subjects to follow in the course. I'm kind of thinking about that part. Is it something useful? I mean,
yeah, I think the suggestion here, and this is really those bullet points on that side are really talking about the idea of using open book tests, right? And so then avoiding those easy to just plug in the correct answer kind of things. But even in a simplistic something with simple computations that they then explain how they did it, or explain the significance of the results or something, you can then kind of take it to another level where it's not just, well, here's the right answer, and they plug it in, right? But it challenges them to at least think about, explain why it's the right answer, or something like that. I think that's all that's saying. It's obviously, with any kind of science or math, or obviously at the core, there are various simple computations that need to take place, right? But I think the reliance on just simple computations is the suggestion that should be avoided. Is the thing that should be avoided.
Yeah, okay.
That's my interpretation too, and like especially, if it's going to be an open book, you wouldn't want to just, you'd want to build like Jay said, and especially in math. I did see, and I am aware at the time, Jonathan had to go. I know I do want to wrap this up, but I did want to say that our math colleagues, like this is they're really struggling with this. Like one of them came and showed me. They said, check this out. He set this and wrote by hand a formula, and then took a picture of it with this app, and it didn't just, and it gave all the information. It didn't just give the right answer. It gave step by step so you can show your work. And I'm like, wow, how do you fight that? And you can't fight it for a simple computation, but you can put those in there and then explain why, build on that. How do you,
explain why this works, explain how this works. So I think one of these interesting questions was give the students the full answer, the proof, but have like an error in it and have them identify, the mistake. I think that's an interesting way, for some people. Now, this is coming from somebody who hasn't taken a math or science class since high school, so don't ask me to go any more complex than that. But I think there are kind of some possibilities to work around these things. One of the things about the open book is so many textbooks now have like the answers in the back, right? Or sample answers in the back, or half the answers in the back, or something like that. And so I think some of these suggestions are ways to get past giving an open book test where the students don't have easy access to the answers.
Yep. You want to wrap us up?
Sure.
We can just stop there. Okay,
Yeah,
that's better.
I think that's good. You will